Hey everyone, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sub That Tutorials and More. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss out on any new videos, and check the video description for a link to the Sub That Learning Library app. Inside of our mobile/web app, you are able to access all of our free tutorials in our neatly organized content library, as well as upgrade for access to exclusive content and communities to help you grow your business to the business of your dreams. In this tutorial, I am going to be showing you how to sublimate a small ceramic planter with a bamboo bottom. Now, these came out a few months ago from Johnson's Plastics Plus and quickly sold out. I was so jealous at how many of you were able to get them before I got a chance to, but as soon as they came back in stock, I rushed and ordered them. I cannot believe how much I fell in love with doing these, and I'm really excited to show you how easy they are and how beautifully they come out. So let's go ahead and turn things around. I'll give you a look at the product, we'll get our measurements, and we will get started. Here's a look at our ceramic planter with the bamboo bottom. You can see it's just like a nice little tray, decorative. I love these. This has got to be one of my favorite product releases for Sublimation for 2024. I just love them so much. Okay, so we can sublimate this whole thing. The recommendation is to do this in a 40-ounce tumbler press if you have one. I do not, so we're going to be using our trusty convection oven. I'm going to do a full wrap design for this, so let's go ahead and get those measurements. We want our height and our circumference, which will be the width of our design. So I'm just going to line that up with that bottom edge there. And looks like we're at 3 1/4. It says 4 1/4, but that's because I always start at the one line. So 3 1/4, and we'll get that wrapped as straight as we can around the middle. 3 1/4 by 12 5/8. So we've got 12 5/8 as our width and 3 1/4 as our height. Let's go ahead and set our design up in Affinity Designer. We're going to be setting up our design in Affinity Designer. I am using a Windows PC, and also my interface layout is set up for how I navigate the software. You've likely seen this in all of our videos, but just as a reminder, your interface might look a little bit different than mine, but everything is still there. Because we need to set up our design first for this particular project, we are going to start by opening up a new document that is the size of those measurements that we got for our ceramic planter. You will come to File and then New or New Document, and come straight to your Layout tab and enter in the measurements. Make sure that you've adjusted your document units correctly from the drop-down menu before you do this. Our measurements were 12 5/8 width, which is 12.625. And our height for our planter was 3 1/4, which is 3.25. We want to make sure our DPI is set to 300. Underneath our color tab, our color format should be RGB/8, with the color profile being sRGB IEC 61966-2.1. Now, these settings are universal when it comes to creating or setting up a sublimation design. Always make sure that these are the settings that you have selected. The only time your color profile may look different is sometimes during your document setup, which will be the next step after we get our design. So you can always refer back to our different videos where I talk about that. But for the purpose of setting up your design to start, this is what your settings should be. I always prefer to have a transparent background selected, and once you have all of that set, you can click on Create. So this space is our full wrap around our sublimation planter. Anything that we put inside of this space is going to be printed and wrap around our planter. So if you want to do a seamless pattern, photos, text, whatever it is, you want it to all fit within this. The goal here is to use this to help you lay it out accordingly and make sure you're really just happy with the overall look for what you're going for. I think that these planters are a really great option for doing seamless borders, and I've gone ahead and downloaded some of those from Creative Fabrica. I got this Spring Blossom watercolor seamless border option. There's 3 different ones here, and I really like this one that's nice and full with I think daffodils and tulips and lilacs and maybe hydrangeas. I'm not 100% sure what all the flowers are, but either way, I really like that one, and that's the one we're going to go for today. So we want to import that seamless border since I've already downloaded it. You can import any graphic, whether it's a picture, digital paper, clip art elements, by coming to the Place tool, which is the picture icon in your left tools panel, or by coming to File and then Place. This is going to open up your File Explorer, and you can go ahead and select your files. I'm going to just choose this one that I have already mentioned that has a nice full bottom and work with that. Click on Open, and when you see the downward arrow with the portal, that means your graphic is ready to be placed on your document. You can click one time and it will import at the full size, or you can click and drag if you want to be able to resize it on import. So I'm going to do one click because I want to see kind of how it fills this space at full size. This is designed to be seamless. We can see like our tulip is cut off on either side, so it's end-to-end seamless. When we look at this middle part though, it doesn't really have the option for this to be seamless anywhere in the middle. I really prefer a good seamless pattern to be able to be overlapped at the midpoint and at the quarter mark points. That way you have a bit of flexibility for different types of spaces that you might be filling. So we can work with this particular one a few different ways. First is we can extend the size by dragging those corner nodes diagonally so that it's edge to edge, and then we can align it within that space. Now, this particular option is not bad for a planter. I do think that this could work, but I really wanted to have a bit more fullness with all of the flowers and stuff that are in here. So our next option is to shrink this on down. And in this case, we'll go to the halfway point. So I'm going to shrink that on down until I get that green vertical line. If I can get it, there we go, the green vertical line. That is our snapping guide. That's what we're seeing. It's letting me know that that edge is right in the middle of my design space. If you don't see your snapping guides, the red and green guides, you want to just come to this magnet icon and make sure that it is selected. So I'm going to drag this down to the bottom because this would be like my bottom edge of my planter, and that's how I want to line this up. And then I can go ahead and come to my layers panel, right click on that layer and select duplicate, and then just drag it out to the other edge, and everything lines up really nicely. Now again, I do like how this looks, but there's so much empty wasted space on my planter. I don't want empty wasted space. I really want to fill this up as much as possible. I want this to just have a nice, beautiful wrapped look. So because this seamless pattern doesn't have the ability to really be overlapped anywhere successfully without having a harsh line, what we're going to do is overlap 2 of these and then do a little erase editing so that it looks a bit more fluid. I'm going to get rid of the first one there just to start, and then I'm going to resize this one until I'm happy with how it's filling the space. So I'm pretty happy with that. See how we've got it almost to the top? That's really what I'm going for with this. So we do want to make sure that we're snapped all the way to the edge because we want to have that seamless edge right there so that this will wrap up and line up accordingly. And then you're going to come to that layers panel and you are going to right click and duplicate that. And then simply drag out that new duplicate layer all the way to the other edge until you get that green snapping guide. So you can see we've got this harsh line right here. We're going to need to edit that, and we have just a lot of overlap right in here, and we're going to want to edit that as well. So to give ourselves a good visual of the space that we're editing so we don't accidentally do too much, we are going to select one of the layers. So in this case, I've selected the one on top, and we're going to drag a guideline so that it's right on that edge. So we just have that as a visual when we don't have that layer selected. As long as your rulers are visible, you simply click and drag on that ruler and it will bring a line. See that blue line that is right there. If you don't see your rulers, come to View and select Show Rulers. Make sure that is check marked. Now we're going to do the same thing for the other one. So I'm going to select that bottom layer and I want to drag one of these guidelines all the way to the edge of that one as well. So now when we click off, we can see our two blue guidelines, and this is the space that we're going to work on editing in between. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you guys can see that better. And now we're going to go over to our pixel persona so we can use our pixel editing tools. The pixel persona is your little like checkerboard square option up at these three icons. When you click on it, it does say pixel persona when you're hovering over top. We want to select which layer we want to start with. I'm going to start with the layer that's on top just so I can try and blend out this area here where this harsh line is before I do anything else. So I'm going to select that layer that's on top. I'm going to right click and select rasterize, and then come to your tools panel and select your erase brush tool. Now remember, these tools here are only visible in the pixel persona because these are the pixel editing tools. The tools and functionality that you have is dependent on which persona you are in. So with our erase brush tool selected, we then need to come to the brushes tab. And in our brushes tab, we are going to select from our drop down and choose one of our brushes. Go with the basic brush. That's one of the default brushes in Affinity Designer. And I'm just going to choose a round soft brush. I don't want anything with too harsh of lines, but I also don't want anything with too soft of lines. So round soft brush is what we're going for. Now when you have this hovered over your design, you can kind of see like where it will erase when you brush over it. So that's a really good visual to see before you actually click and drag and end up erasing anything. If you don't see this circle, you likely have your cap locks selected. So when your cap locks is selected, you get the little crosshairs. When your cap locks is off or deselected, you get the round brush. So we're going to focus on that. So I want to just kind of figure out where I want to erase some of this top layer. We're probably going to aim to erase it right about to this midpoint and then do the same thing with the bottom layer just so we get it nice and fluid and it doesn't look so congested in here. Obviously, I want to erase this tulip that's right here, this half of a yellow tulip, because we've got this harsh line. And there's already one of these daffodils underneath, so I'm going to erase that one daffodil as well. So to erase, all you're going to do is click and drag down and kind of just erase out what it is that you want to erase out. Now I've got two daffodils here as well, so I think I'm going to go ahead and erase that. These purple flowers are very forgiving because they blend together so well because they're just kind of all clustered that we don't have to worry too much about harsh lines. I think I am going to erase this tulip as well, but I want to do a smaller nozzle so that I can retain some of that purple flower, I think. I want to at least retain, yeah, I want to keep that purple flower. So I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see this a little bit better. And I'm going to decrease my nozzle size. Now you can adjust that by going to your width slider here, or by using the bracket keys, the ones that look like sideways staples on your keyboard. So I just use my keyboard setting because I really prefer that one. And now I'm just going to go ahead and really focus on that one tulip. And I'm going to make sure I don't get too close to that purple flower because I want to keep that purple flower intact. Oh, I think I went a little bit too far down here. All right, if you ever go too far, you can literally just undo. And then you can kind of come back in as necessary. So it's going to undo every stroke based on how much you had selected. So I'm going to come back over across that. And then I'm going to go in smaller, even smaller here. And I'm just going to clean up right up to that purple edge. There we go. All right. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. Let's just make sure we don't have any random residue because we do have that soft edge on our brush. So now, as I said, we're going to do the same thing on the other layer as well, just coming from the other direction. If we get rid of that guide, you can just drag it off. We can get a nice good visual. This looks much better blended. You can hardly tell that this is not a seamless pattern. We can tell though because we've got this overlapping doubles over here, so that's what we're going to fix next. So we're going to come to that bottom layer and we're going to repeat the same things that we just did. We're going to right click, rasterize, select our erase brush tool, select the stroke brush type that we would like. I'm going to make this one pretty big, and then we're just going to go ahead and erase what we want. So I know for sure I want to get rid of that duplicate tulip there and there, so I am just going to go right ahead and go over those. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of that one little bit of purple that was right there as well, the little lilac. And I think that was really it. Didn't really need a lot of editing on that other one because we had already started blending it out. Once again, you can drag that guideline off so you can get a good visual, and we can kind of see how everything is looking here. I think this looks very well blended, and this will be perfect for our planter. So once you are happy with everything that is filled within your planter template space, you are going to export this entire thing as a PNG. That is what you're going to then import for your printing purposes. Now, if you want to be able to come back to this document and work on it in the future, you need to go to File and then Save As, and then that will allow you to save this affinity document so that you can come back to that in the future. Because I just want the PNG and I don't need to edit this further in the future, I'm going to come to export, and you're going to want to go to export regardless. Always make sure to export your designs. It will just save you a lot of little issues that can pop up with your design if something wasn't converted quite properly, or if you didn't quite save your colors quite right, or whatever it is. You can easily mitigate those problems by always exporting your design and then importing in the PNG when it comes time to print. So come to File, Export, make sure that PNG is selected from the drop-down menu, make sure you have whole document selected, and then choose Export. Now I've actually already saved that, so we're going to go ahead and save it again. We'll just replace it. And now I'm going to exit out of this. Again, I did not save my affinity file because I'm not planning on working on this again. So when I exit out of this, it's of course going to ask me if I want to save it, and I'm choosing no. Next, we want to open up our page for printing. So you want to open up a page that is in a document that is in the page size you plan on printing on in the orientation that your printer prints. This is very important. A lot of people make mistakes because they don't follow this step. If you just follow this step, you're going to get seamless printing every single time. Because our planter design width is 12 5/8 inches, you're going to need 11 by 17 paper or 13 by 19 or rolled paper. I'm using my Epson SureColor F570 Pro from Johnson's Plastics Plus today, which does have the option for 17-inch wide rolled paper, and I'm planning on printing multiple planters, so I can just set my document accordingly for that, so I can print multiples at once. Come to File, New, and new document, and then select or enter in the page size that you are working with, and again in the orientation that you are going to want. Because I'm using rolled paper that is 12 inches
or that is 17 inches wide, and I'm planning on printing 3 of these planters, I believe. So I'm going to be doing the 12 inches high. This is what will work for me for today. But yours might only be for one planter, so maybe you're just using 11 by 17 paper. Make sure that you have it lined up in the orientation that it feeds into your printer. So for most printers that can print 11 by 17 paper, so tabloid paper or Super B paper, you are going to be printing and setting up your document with portrait. But because I'm using rolled paper, it is going to print landscape because the roll is 17 inches wide and the height of it is whatever I set it to. Underneath your layout tab, we want to make sure that DPI is set to 300. You're then going to come to your color tab. Your color format should be RGB/8, always for sublimation. And your color profile should be sRGB IEC 61966-2.1 for any Epson printer, any Sawgrass printer, any Brother printer, when you are printing with a Windows computer. This is the most up-to-date color profile for the RGB/8 color format. However, if you are using an older Mac specifically, you may face some issues on color output. If that happens, the best option for you is the Adobe RGB 1998, which is the previous color profile. Most users are going to be using this sRGB IEC. Now, for those of you who may have an ICC profile for your printer, that is not in the settings. That is what you select when you go to print. So just always keep these things in mind. I know it might feel like there's a lot of moving parts, but each of these things serves a different purpose. And if you want more clarity on that, be sure to check out the Mastering Sublimation Color series in the That Learning Library app. It's a couple hours long of different short little videos, and I talk all about what this terminology means, what these things do, how they impact your color, and why it actually matters when you want to have accurate printing every single time. Once you have everything set, go ahead and click Create. Now we're going to import our design that we created in that little template that we had into our document here and get everything set up to print. So we're going to select the Place Image tool. Once again, I'm going to grab my planter wrap. I'm going to do the one click this time, so it should import at the correct size. Always double check by coming to that transform panel and verifying that your measurements are accurate. And like I said, I'm planning on printing multiples of these, so I'm just going to go ahead and center that, and I'm going to right click and duplicate, and right click and duplicate again. I'm going to leave a little bit of space so I can get these cut fairly easily. And I'm just gonna, there we go, center everything up. So once you have everything aligned on your page, you might need to rotate this. Of course, if you're using paper that is in portrait orientation, you can do that just by selecting your rotation tools at the top. Once everything is ready to go, you are ready to send this to print. Come to File and then Print. You're going to select your printer from the drop-down menu and then select Properties. Now, it doesn't matter what printer you're using, this is the step you need to follow. You're going to click Properties. For those of you who are using a converted sublimation printer, your Properties settings, this is where you might select any type of color correction settings that you have, ICC profiles, all of that stuff is selected within your printer utility dialog box. You can refer back to some of our older videos to see what that looked like when we had the Workforce 7710. With the Epson SureColor F570 Pro, this printer is flawless out of the box. We don't have to make any kind of color adjustment, nothing. We just use the normal settings for sublimation that I just talked about when we set up our document. And the only thing we have to do here is select our page size. So if you are using this printer, you're going to come to document size, you're going to come to settings, and you're going to choose the page size that you have created for yourself. You can see I keep all kinds of preset page sizes in here. We're doing the 12 inch by 17 inch, and make sure that that picture is correct. So there we go. It is, we want it to be this direction. I'm going to click OK. And then I have same as paper size selected, so it's going to go ahead and output that accordingly. If you want to add a new paper size, you can do that underneath that custom paper size option. You can give it a name if you would like to save it. Now, again, I'm using my rolled paper, but if you were using single sheets, you could choose your auto sheet feeder. And then my rolled paper width is that 17-inch one, so I need to go ahead and select that from the drop down. Printer settings, this is asking if I want textile or rigid. I'm going to do rigid for this. And I don't need a print preview, so I'm going to deselect that. Now, by default, this should already be set to mirror, which it is, but if you are using a converted sublimation printer and you haven't saved your settings as a default, then always make sure that you are set up for mirror print for this project and most sublimation projects. So once everything is ready to go, we just click OK and OK again, and it's going to send this off to print.
Once your transfer is successfully printed, go ahead and trim it all the way around the edges so you don't have any little white left where it matters, on the sides particularly. We're going to need some heat tape and some shrink wrap. Now I will go ahead and link the recommended size shrink wrap for this particular item, but I have a bunch of this size that I bought in accident. So I'm actually just going to cut it in half, and it should be just about right for these planters. All right, let's go ahead and wrap our transfer around. Now, this particular design is not filling the whole space just because of the floral print that we're using. So I want to make sure I get it nice and close to the bottom so that I have that nice effect when it's sitting in its little bamboo base. So we're going to go ahead and overlap that. Make sure it's nice and tight. And I'm going to stick some heat tape down that seam line, making sure that I am pulling these edges nice and tight as I go. We want to have a little bit of an overlap, just a slight overlap. And I do like to wrap around my edges. Okay. Next, we'll slide our shrink wrap over that. And we're going to hit this with our heat gun. Now, I always like to do the top and the bottom first and then do the middle. It just really helps it go better. And because this is a little big, I'm just going to pull it tight like this until I start to get a seal so that it won't shrink in the wrong places unnecessarily. Now, you don't need to have this all perfectly shrunk everywhere. I always just focus on my edges and then do a little double check anytime you're using shrink wrap around those edges of your paper. Make sure none of it has wrinkled from any air gaps or anything, because that's going to give you that warbling effect that a lot of people call ghosting, but it's actually just warbling. It's caused from your paper crinkling because it was not tight enough to your substrate, and then the shrink wrap sucking out that air and crinkling your page, and then it just not being able to transfer. So we're going to do this in our convection toaster oven for 17 minutes, but we're going to check it at 15 and see how it's doing. The range recommended is 15 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on your convection toaster oven. So this is our first run. I've done ceramic items before that are thick like this, so I'm going to go for 17, but I'm going to check it at 15. If it looks like it's about done, then I'll pull it out then. But you're gonna wanna, of course, test yours. And I'm doing 380 degrees for my temperature for this. So I'm just using our handy dandy Black & Decker convection toaster oven. This is not very big. It was pretty cheap and affordable over at Walmart. There are similar ones linked in the Amazon storefront for Sub That as well. Similar models, some that are a little bit bigger, so you have some options depending on what's going to work best for you. This works great for me for everything that I do tutorial-wise and the occasional personal project. So let's go ahead and pop that open. We're going to slide that right on into the center. And just double check to make sure, yeah, we're nice in between those two heating elements. Pop that close. So as I said, we're doing 380 degrees. We're going to do 15 to 17 minutes. I'm going to check it around the 15-minute mark, see how it's doing, give it an extra minute or two if it needs to. So I will update accordingly. And of course, the time and temp will be listed below this video as the official that we do, since this is our first run at doing one of these planters. So it's been about 15 minutes and we're going to check this to see if it's ready. Anytime I am doing something that is glass, ceramic, or aluminum, stainless steel, whatever we call it, in the convection toaster oven, one of the ways that I check to make sure that it is adequately transferred is by actually looking for the image to see if it is bleeding through. This is very hot. Okay. Try this. Okay, so you can see that it's bleeding through right there. That's a positive sign. But when I check the whole thing, the other side here, see, we can't quite see it as well there. So that tells me that we still need a couple more minutes to make sure that this is adequately heated through and our design has transferred. So we are just going to stick that right back in there. And I originally thought it would take 15 to 17 minutes, but I'm actually going to give this another 5 minutes. I'm going to go for the 20 minutes and we'll check this again in 5 minutes. So we are now at our 20-minute mark, and let's go ahead and pull this back out. Ooh, much better. I think you can see it on the camera. Just from spinning this around, I can see we've got it's showing up everywhere. That means that we've got a good transfer. So 20 minutes was the sweet spot for my convection oven. Again, you are going to need to test yours out and see within that 15 to 20 minute range which works best for you. I will let you know that if you're going to add 2 in there, it looks like I could fit 2, maybe 3 in here at a time. You're going to want to add approximately 30% more time for each additional one. So if we're doing 20, we'll just say 21 minutes, we would add an extra 7 minutes to do 2 in there. We would add an extra 14 minutes to do 3 in there. So keep that in mind as well. Now this is going to take some time to cool off, so we're going to let this cool off and we'll come back to peel it. Our ceramic pot is completely cooled. I did already start to peel off some of the shrink wrap. It is best to do this when the shrink wrap is still a little bit warm, when everything is still a little bit warm, because it does just make the shrink wrap peel off a lot easier. When it gets completely cool like this, it tends to stick to some of these edges, which can be really, really annoying. So I just kind of had peeled some of that off to get me started. And I'm going to grab this little tape that I got in here. And when I can, I like to use this little tape piece as a pull tab, which also works better when this is warm. All right, so if you kind of like pull it over like that, then you can pull it down like a pull tab. Again, it works better when it is warm. We just got a little busy and let this cool completely, that's all. Which is only annoying because the shrink wrap tends to stick a little bit and you got to kind of pull it off with your fingernail. And also it makes the shrink wrap come in these like a bunch of little pieces. All right, let's see if I can get another edge here. Okay. So as I mentioned, try and get that shrink wrap and your transfer off while it's still a little bit warm. It does make it easier. If you find that your shrink wrap is sticking, especially around these edges, if you just hit it with your heat gun, it will warm it up enough that it's easy to peel off. Now I was able just to get it off once I got going there. And here is a look. Let's get some of our shrink wrap scraps out of the way. Honestly, these look so pretty. I'm really impressed with how this came out, especially for our first try. And there's this little bamboo bottom for you to have a look at. These mini ceramic planters are available through Johnson's Plastics Plus. They're great for sublimation. As you can see, they are absolutely beautiful, a pretty easy project as well. You're going to want a convection toaster oven or a 40-ounce tumbler press to do these successfully. Don't forget to download the Sub That Learning Library app if you have not done that already to be able to easily find all of our tutorials quickly and effortlessly, as well as engage in our sublimation help community. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.